Welcome to the tutorial on creating a Microsoft Access database. Database programs are like electronic filing cabinets. It's where we store data, sometimes in large quantities, sometimes in small quantities, and where we can retrieve it, and we can also do searches by specific criteria. So it's a very useful program, and again we're using Microsoft Access. First thing we're going to do is we're going to go to our Programs menu and find the Microsoft Office folder and click on Microsoft Access. We can either open an existing file or create a new database. We can use templates from office.com or from our home menu, or we can just choose a blank database. In this exercise, we're going to develop an address book, which is a fairly simple activity using Access, but it gives us an idea of some of the key parts of a database. So we're going to go to blank database, and in this view we have a data table where we can add information, and we can also design the data table around our needs. In this case we're going to create an address book. So let's go ahead and go to the View menu, and we'll click the pencil, and we're going to call this address book. Click OK. And what address book does in this case is it's going to set up an area where we can list our fields. A field is a category of data. Alright, this is set up as something called a primary key. We're going to right mouse click that and uncheck it so it's no longer primary key. Primary key is for fields that will connect to other data sheets, and we'll get to that later, but right now we're going to create a fairly simple project here with no primary key. Right mouse click in the corner, we can add it as a primary key, or we can take it away. We're going to take it away. The field names that we need, or the categories in an address book, certainly would be first name. Let's divide it into first name and last name. The field type is text. Now we have properties down here, as you can see, but we're not going to worry about those right now. Properties would be like how many characters do you want to limit this field to. We're not going to worry about that. First name, last name. Again, the data type is text. We want an address field, text, a city field. We're separating these out in case we want to look something up by city or by name. We have separate fields where we can look up just an individual category if we want to. State, text. One thing we could do with state is we could limit the field size to 2 characters, which would force people to use the postal abbreviation for the state field. I think I'm going to go ahead and do that. And then finally we have zip code, which let's change that in the data type to number. At least that'll force people to put a number in the zip code, and they won't be able to enter text there. So we've got our field or categories in the database. This is not where we're entering the data yet. We're just setting up the categories. And we have the data type. Everyone is text except zip code, which is going to force the person entering the data to enter a number rather than text. Okay. Now we can go back to view to something called data sheet view, or just click on the sheet. It's going to ask us to save the table, which we'll go ahead and say yes. Alright, so looking down at the lower part of this data sheet, we have record 1 of 1. That's the terminology used in the database, as each line is a record. Okay, so we can begin the process of entering our address book people. Last name is not people. And we'll throw in an address. Now if I try to spell out Wisconsin, it's going to give me an error, so I have to use the postal abbreviation. If I try to put any text in here, it's not going to let me enter that, so I've got to enter a number. Not that people wouldn't know that, but anyway. All right, now I'm on record 2 of 2. You can see that at the bottom. So we've got 2 records. Looks a little bit like a spreadsheet, but it can do things that a spreadsheet can't do, and that's for another lesson here. But in this assignment, you're going to be creating an address book with 12 people. You can use family members, and you just want to get 12 records in there, and the next step is going to be manipulating some of that data. We're actually going to make mailing labels with the address book. Okay, so I'm just going to put the same address down here so we can take it to the next step. All right, so say we have our 12, I only have 2, but let's say we do have 12 in there, and we want to go to the Create tab. Let's save the changes here. You can always open it back up just by clicking in Tables, back up, open back up. Then if we double click that, it'll open back up. Create, and one of the things that you have to create on this first assignment are labels. And we can do a 3 across mailing type label. There's many options here, and a lot of the product numbers align with manufacturers of these labels. We're going to use Avery 5160, which is the standard mailing label. You can just go with that. That's what comes up automatically. All right, and here are the font and text color choices that you could work with. I'm just going to go with the default settings. All right, what do we want on our label? I'm going to take first name, put a space with the space bar, last name, hit the enter key, address, enter again, city, put a comma, state, space, zip code. So I'm using this little arrow to move it over to the label. Okay. We don't have to sort these labels, so we're going to go to next, and now we're going to see the labels as they're printed. And I only had 2 labels in my example. You're going to have 12, and you'll see them appear across the screen, 3 across each row. And then if we wanted to print these, say we were going to mail out an invitation, we could go to File and Print. We'd have to have the labels in our printer at that point. So this is just one way that we could use our address database that we created. Going back to tables on the left-hand side, you can see all these objects. So far we've created labels, and we also have our original address book. Okay, and we can keep adding addresses, as many as we want, lots of them. Okay, so that concludes setting up a basic database using Microsoft Access, and then taking it one step further and creating labels with the information that we entered. To save the database, we simply close it out. It saves ahead of time, so you don't have to worry about saving as much as you do, say, in other Microsoft documents. Thanks for listening.